Associations are a $0 business. What they budget is what they need to collect. So,
Exactly.
a lot of people say to me, oh, we don't have a delinquency problem. We got, 5 delinquencies in our building of 200. I said, that's not good, because you budgeted for those five delinquent owners. Let's say they pay $6,000 a year, that you're going to be $30,000 short on your budget this year. It is the true nature of boards of directors not to have a contingency fund, not to have a cushion. And I'm not talking about reserves here. We can talk about reserves later.
This year, going into 2022, insurance rates have already started going up. So there's
Right.
a huge difference right there in Florida. Have you seen a lot of things occurring on your end of the situation with COVID?
Well, when COVID started, we expected to see a lot more delinquencies. But what we didn't calculate is that COVID did not affect older people as much as it affected younger people. So we really did not see the delinquencies we saw in the real estate meltdown. Now, you made a very good point about insurance. Right now in Florida, we're going to see 20 to 30% increase in insurance. On top of that, we have 6% inflation rate. Okay, so what are boards of directors going to do? Are they going to adhere to the fiduciary duties and make an honest budget? Because I have 5 points to community association management. Number 1 is fund your reserves. Number
Right.
2 is make an honest budget. Number 3 is have open meetings. Number 4, let your manager do their job. And number 5 is have proper insurance. Don't have high deductibles, and make sure that your insurance is adequate. But boards of directors have one item on their agenda: keep the assessments low. Now, after the Surfside tragedy, you would think that people would be a little more intelligent about that, especially in condominium towers. Because, an HOA, one building could collapse. All right, but that's not the common area. But no, people have short memories and they're going right back to where they were. I'm very curious to see how my condominium, which hasn't increased their assessment, there's no way that I'm not going to see a substantial increase. And I hope that they do give a substantial increase, because I don't want my investment, my money, which I've paid out over 30 years or whatever, to go to hell. Because I've got a building right now that I'm working with, 62 units. They're about to be red stickered here in Florida. And the shame of it all is that almost everybody is paid off. There's no mortgage in there. And they're going to be red stickered, which means that they're going to lose their certificate of occupancy and they're going to be thrown out of their units.
Same situation is not because the building has lost its integrity, or
the building is, they're 5 years past their 40-year cert. The balconies have already been condemned by the building. They can't go out on their balconies. When I walked in there for the first time to meet the board, because they wanted some advice and I was consulting them on something, I saw cracks running up the side of the wall. I saw exposed rebar. But the good news is that they only pay $269 a month in assessments, and there's no money in the reserves for anybody to steal. That's the good news. But they're all going to lose their homes. They're going to lose their apartments, and they don't have mortgages. So the equity that they built up
is gone
by neglecting to increase their assessments and to maintain the building, they have just taken their money over 30 years and thrown it into a bonfire of misinformation.
And I was just reading an article not so long ago that condos started, what was it, late 70s, early 80s? That's when the condo boom hit, right?
Condominiums started, the condominium law was written as we know it in 1992, and the HOA law in Florida, 720, was written kind of like in 2007. All right. And I saw somebody wrote an article on your website, Joe Adams from Becker Polyakov.
Yeah.
Joe Adams had a big hand in writing the laws for community associations.
Well, and that was some of the things that I was reading. It's like, okay, now we're starting to see these buildings that were so wonderful and beautiful at one point in time have now aged. And now what do you do? and going back to the same thing that you just said, if you don't plan ahead for that improvement down the road, it might as well be a part of your fees up front than it be part of your fees down. But I wonder, like right now would be the good time to increase your fees though, because isn't it the seller's market, I think?
Yeah, it's a seller's market, but it depends on the condominium that you're in. For instance, my condominium where I live in a very nice neighborhood in Aventura, Florida, and a great building. But I would say 70% of my building are rentals, and they're owned by overseas investors. And these overseas investors don't care what the lobby looks like, as long as the rents are going up and the rents are increasing like they'll love to see lower assessments. They're not thinking the long game where, maybe I should, pay more in assessments and be more dutiful to the reserves because, I want this place right 30 years from now or 20 years from now or whatever. So when you have a building, so that's a building with a lot of investors, and they don't care about capital improvement projects or preventive maintenance. They're not thinking in the long run because they're real estate people. They're going to sell it in 3 years, 5 years when the market gets hot, do a 1031 and get into another building somewhere. So this is one of the issues. One of the issues, the greatest problems I find out with community associations in Florida, now we're being Florida specific, is that there are too many people, too many investors buying units in order to enrich themselves through a business. Condominium is a home for people. A condominium is not an enterprise. In other words, condominiums have become the plaything of finance, whereas condominiums were built to house families or individuals or people. And that's one of the biggest problems. Okay, well then I have a recommendation for people, for managers to bring to their boards of directors if you have this situation. If your bylaws do not contradict and the board of directors is not happy with a situation like that, and the bylaws are silent on renting, silent on investors, or silent on one person owning a whole bunch of properties, if they're not mentioned in the bylaws, then you could go to your rules and regulations, and then you could change that.
Yeah.
You can't change it if it's in the bylaws. The only way to change it is have an attorney change it, which you can. Now, of course, it would not be ex post facto, would not be retroactive. But for instance, I would like somebody to put a rule and a regulation or change the bylaws in my condominium that says the amount of rentals, because I'm not against rentals, because I think, and I'm not against investors, but when you have, a building with 75% rentals, it's out of control. It's wrong. And then a lot of them try the Airbnb, which really reduces the quality of life because you got people walking in and out like it's a hotel.
That makes your insurance rates go up too.
And insurance rates go up. And you will not get FHA approval if there's a lot of renters in there, if it's primarily a rental building. So it does not serve the building well to allow an overabundance of renters. So I think that community associations would do best to either go by the rules and regulations and amend them to restrict rentals to 25% of the building or a certain, and even go so far as saying, if they have to even change their bylaws, that one entity cannot own all the units. However, people will circumvent that by opening up different LLCs. I looked at the roster for my building. I told you it's a lot of rentals. The majority of owners in my building, according to the Florida property appraiser site or the Miami-Dade property appraiser site, are all LLCs, are all corporations. And as a matter of fact, there is even not a violation, but the spirit of the law. They say in condominium documents, they always say you can't run a commercial enterprise out of a condo. Correct? You've seen that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when the condo is the commercial enterprise?
Right.
That is, you said, I can't sell candy out of my condo, but I can rent the condo. Where's the logic in that?
See, I can't use my kitchen to cook baked goods and sell them,
Right.
but I can do that. Yeah.
But I could bring in Charlie Manson and the Hells Angels to live here.
Yeah.